Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this week's Thrive in China Roundtable. For those of you that have shown up live, welcome. This is an opportunity for you to ask any questions during or throughout today's presentation. We will have a Q&A at the end. For those of you that are watching this on record or replay, if you do have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out as well. Today's topic is quite interesting. It's the top 20 tips to understand China's business culture, and I hope to be able to provide you with a couple of things by the end of today. One is how to attain a China cultural fluency. And what I mean by this is in practice on a day-to-day basis with your employees, with third parties that you're collaborating with. How should you be behaving? How should you, there's a lot of interest today. Sorry, I'm admitting people as I go. How people should behave, how people should interact with each other on a practical day-to-day business standpoint. Then we'll look at what I believe are the top 20 tips to understand China's business culture. Now, we are in 2022. So some of these things might seem very old-fashioned. So it will really come down to who you are speaking with, whether it's an elderly person, whether it's a millennial. But I do want to provide you with an overview of that. And I will specify whether it pertains to older people or the younger generation. And then I've ended today's presentation with summary of keywords for successfully leading a team in China. Now, for me, lots of organizations in China seem to face a huge capability gap when it comes to successfully implementing international and cross-border strategies. The strategy may be fine as a concept, but Chinese individuals within companies very often lack a sufficiently international mindset to allow them to implement the strategy successfully. And that's when things can go badly wrong. And this specifically pertains to those of you that are considering to localize your business. You're thinking of hiring only local Chinese GMs or senior managers. And if they've never had experience working previously with foreign invested companies, with foreign individuals, you may find that from a mindset perspective, and it's actually more of a mindset perspective, there's a gap in that bridge, okay? So you can either take two approaches. One, you find somebody who actually can build a proper bridge between HQ and China and knows how to culturally interpret and also maintain the relationship with both organizations, or you have to teach this. And if you teach it, then you have to be very open to understanding how Chinese individuals think, how they work. You have to have an open mindset. Now, let's get cracking. And I'm just going to literally go point through point. Now, suggestion number one. Recognize and accept how little you know about China and that you are not a China expert. I market myself as being a China expert. I've been there for 18 years. It doesn't actually mean that I am an expert. Who is an expert? All the Chinese employees that I have in my team. Why? Because they're trained as Chinese CPAs. They went to school and have a network with other accountants and tax officers and government bureaus. I will never have that network, not as solid as they have. It took me a long time because I came to China as a foreigner, developed an ego, got arrogant, got stubborn, and wanted things done my way. And the outcome of that was very simply, we did not grow and scale at the speed that we should have done. Why? Because I did not actually listen to my team and didn't open the doors enough for my team to be able to communicate and explain why certain things were not working. I want to highlight to everybody, don't get me wrong. It's always going to be vital that you have the right employees on hand that are the right fit for your organization, that you collaborate with third parties or joint venture partners. Anybody in your ecosystem, obviously they have to be the right fit. They have to be value-added partners, and all of that. But if they are, then you have to accept the fact that they will always know more than you. And they should be knowing more than you. You weren't born and raised in China. How long have you actually lived to China? And in the last 3 years, how often have you actually set foot in China? Not much. So you have to accept the fact that they know more than you. And you have to open the doors and realize that communication with them is vital. You will learn a lot from them as long as you are open to listening to their ideas. And the worst thing that you can do is actually pinch them down and say their ideas are crap. They know nothing. They don't know anything about the business. They don't know the philosophy of the company. You might be a Hong Kong headquartered company. You might be a US headquartered company, a German headquartered company, and you might have certain philosophies and ethoses that you want to abide by. A lot of the time you can throw that out the window in China. You will have to create new philosophies, new ethoses, and you will have to do that with the team that you're developing or with the third-party ecosystem that you are developing in China. Take everything with a pinch of salt. Like I said, it's a matter of finding the right partners, the right employees, the right individuals who are going to be helping you to grow and scale in China. So initially in these relationships, you don't want to give away too much information, but at the same time, you don't want to hold so much back that the operation becomes inefficient, that you can't grow and scale at the speed that you want to grow and scale. There has to be a balance. But keep in mind, you are building a bridge between China and your HQ. That bridge has to be 100% solid. Don't start throwing egos out. Don't start being arrogant and stubborn that you know best. Have an open mindset that you listen to your team and you listen to your staff. Now, you also need to accept that you take a significant level of cultural bias into every cross-border transaction. Your background makes you see China in a specific way. Your Chinese counterpart, who was born and raised in China, will probably look at the same situation and see something completely different. All right. Now, you may always look at things that are a benefit and an advantage to you, but that doesn't help your China business. Okay. So again, open mindset. Acclimatize, adapt yourself, pivot yourself to the Chinese culture, and let your team and third parties explain to you how things work in China and how to take advantage of it by pivoting the business in that direction. All right. Now, I'll give you just a very, very simple example of this. We have companies that we help to do cross-border transactions. And you'll have, let's say, a UK company working and invoicing a Chinese company. Invoice is issued, then the question always comes, payment is then received, and then it's always like, why is the payment that I received lower than the actual invoice that I issued? Then you start discussing with your Chinese counterpart, and you realize that they've deducted VAT, they've deducted withholding tax, but this was never actually written in the contract, never discussed, never negotiated. They just went ahead and did it. Why? Because it's to their advantage. So make sure that when you are doing these, the rule of thumb out of that is when you are doing these overseas transactions, get your contracts reviewed, talk to a tax advisor about what the tax implications and liabilities are, and negotiate them ahead of time before you actually physically do a transaction, right? Paying a little bit for gaining your knowledge level and making sure that you don't have that first transaction turn sour, because it's just going to leave a bad taste in your mouth about continuing to do business with them, right? Make sure you got that open discussion. And remember, you want to create a win-win situation on both sides. A win-win for you, in your HQ and a win-win for those that you're collaborating with in China. And listen, I also want to say, after 18 years, sometimes I feel like a therapist and a coach to a lot of my clients. So a lot of this has come from my own personal experiences, but also seeing how a lot of the expats that are new to China, or just generally the mindset of individuals employed in HQ, how sometimes it's such a block that you can't move forward. And then I become a go-between for a lot of people. So I'm creating this presentation so that I can avoid being the go-between, and that you can start building your thinking into just realizing again that things are different, but they don't necessarily mean that they're right. Now, what do I mean by this? You have to realize that the way that you do things in other jurisdictions just might simply not fit for China. You may need to have a different approach to what you are doing back home. Now, this sounds very simplistic, but it is often a difficult message for people to take on board. You've created your business model for China based on probably what you've done in other jurisdictions. I remember talking to a German client of mine who had opened up in India, had expanded to India before China. And the whole process throughout the incorporation of the Chinese entity and thereafter is always comparing to what they do in India. Now, from my perspective, as the outsourced provider in China, I don't care what you've done in India. I care about what you're doing in China and whether those things make sense. Of course, there are certain things that you could always try and replicate, but there will always be a tweaking mechanism that has to occur so that it fits for the Chinese market, okay? For example, you've got a network of distributors. In India, you decided to have a master distribution agreement, and that's what's guided you through the whole process of developing that distribution network. In China, you would like to develop the same. Absolutely. You can have a master distribution agreement and you can sign that with all your distributor network. But, and this is a big but, the distribution agreement you have in India is based on Indian law. You can't just take that template and make the assumption that you can use it in China. You will have to tweak certain clause, terms, and conditions to fit for the Chinese market. You can't just take something from home and make the assumption you can implement it in China. Now, also, on the other side of the coin, what I want to highlight is that you will hear, and this is a problem in China, you will hear a lot of differing information. You might talk with 2-3 different lawyers, and those 3 lawyers might give you completely different advice. You might talk to 2-3 auditors, they also might give you completely different advice. You might talk to 2 to 3 accountants, they might also give you completely different advice. Why is that? Because the law in China is not black and white. There is absolute room for interpretation to create loopholes. So what do lawyers, accountants, and auditors do? They advise based on their own personal experiences and how they have achieved results for their clients, their type of negotiation skills, etc. So it is really important not to get discouraged when you are hearing 3 different pieces of opinion or advice from 3 different lawyers. No need to get discouraged, okay? It is a matter of delving deeper into the problem, understanding what is actually their perspective, how have they helped clients in the past, and does it fit with what you are wanting to do? So yes, in China, there's a lot about communication and conversation because you really have to delve deeper into the problems. Now, this is the same with your staff. You might have a team meeting about, I don't know, marketing strategies. And you have 2 staff members that have opposing points of view. They can have opposing points of view because their experiences have resulted in different things. Okay. The issue when that happens is that you have to come to a compromise. Both of those individuals have to come into a compromise to create something that will work for the company. And that's why a lot of things are tailor-made for you based on your philosophy on China, your ethos on China, how you want to operate in China, your efficiency level on China, and the speed that you want to grow. Okay. So please, please, please make sure that when you are in your startup phase in China, get advice, pay for that advice, get second or third opinions. It's like going to a doctor and you found out that you've got cancer from the first doctor. You go get test results from other doctors just to get different points of view. I hate to say it, but this is also what you do in China. All right. I tell clients, if you don't like what I say, please get a second opinion from another provider. I can give you a list of them. And let's see whether my result is the same as what their experiences have been or whether it's completely different. And if you prefer to go that route, I leave that to you. But the decision has to come from you. Now, this is the issue in China. You have to make decisions quickly. And you have to make your decisions based on sound advice and sound opinion. When everybody is giving you something different, it makes it difficult, doesn't it? Okay, I get it. But the more people that you talk to, the more people you converse to, you will understand how this all works. Okay, don't stay in your bubble, which is what a lot of foreigners do when they're living and working in China. They stay in a bubble of a small network of individuals. Spread your wings, go out there and ask people for advice. Everybody is willing to share their experiences. Actually, that's what I love about China, is I can go to a friend of mine who works at a bank, might be in a completely different banking division, but I can always ask him for advice. If you go to, I'm friends with my competitors. It's no problem to talk to people. They want to share their experiences, and don't hesitate to do that. Suggestion number 4 is think about the impact of every decision for every location, especially pertaining to China. A centrally determined policy is usually biased towards the country it originates from, usually where the head office is. Now, what do I mean by this? And I have a great example of this. So with my previous company, we were acquired by a US entity. And one of the things that they wanted to do in the transition phase was update the entire IT system. And they wanted to update the IT system based on the US standards. So actually, they went as far as this. They actually exported 25 computers to our office, so desktop plus hard drives, with software already installed that we were then to use. Without actually asking us, we got a phone call from customs. Here are 25 computers. Please come and pick them up and pay the customs duty. When we then went through the process of installing, first of all, IT engineers in China did not even know what to do with these computers. Completely different software systems, completely different systems to set up. They didn't have that experience. Second issue is that there was such a firewall on these computers, on these hard drives, that my team could not access tax bureau websites to do tax declarations. They could not access Chinese bank accounts. So I don't know if all of you are aware, but if you are a Mac-centric company, Mac computers, you cannot log on to any Chinese bank through a Mac computer. All right. So if you are making these centrally determined policies within your HQ, and you're like, yeah, we're going to now spread out these policies, HR policies, IT policies, whatever it might be, make sure that it is adaptable to the Chinese market. And if it's not completely adaptable, can you pivot it slightly? One thing that HQ never realizes is the value and importance of WeChat. And obviously, WeChat is done not through a company account, but it's done through your employees' individual accounts. And 90% of communication is done actually via WeChat. Now, in China, we have garnered a policy where no documents can be transferred via WeChat. Everything must be done by email. We teach our clients this. This is how we operate and work. Again, because of GDPR regulations, and also because if we terminate with an employee, their WeChat belongs to them. It has nothing to do with Woodburn, right? So you've got to create policies also that are localized, specific to the Chinese market, and you've got to be aware of what these policies might be. It has nothing to do with HQ, it has to do with the impact of China. Now, do I have clients? No. Do I have staff of clients who are frustrated with us because they can't transfer data and documents on WeChat? Yes, I do. But we've created a policy. We cannot accept anything through WeChat. We cannot take action on anything through WeChat. You've got to imagine that with over 100 clients, the number of WeChat accounts we have per client is just impossible. So we use WeChat purely for phone calls, for brief communication points, brief action plans that have to be done, but we always then log that into our emailing system so we have a history and a track record. Doesn't necessarily mean that this is a policy that everybody should adapt to. I'm just explaining what we do as our own GDPR, China GDPR regulations, right? And personal information. If you now say WeChat is forbidden, wow, you'll not be able to hire people. People will say, well, we can't do our jobs, okay? So if you go to that extreme, that's also not going to work in China. There has to be a compromise and a balance that is created. Just like our former owners who took over our business, in the end, the solution was we did emailing through these new beautiful US computers, and all the accounting work, because we couldn't even add our accounting server, our accounting software system from our server onto that computer. All the actual function of each of my staff members in terms of doing the work on behalf of our clients, we did with the old computers. That was the balance we created. Were my staff happy to have 2 hard drives and 2 sets of computers on their desks that were not integrated? No, but we also had to compromise with HQ. We created a compromise. It worked. However, there was a moment where there was huge frustration by our accounting team, basically saying we can't do our job. So that can also lead then, if they're not reaching certain results, they can always use that as an excuse. So you've got to really, again, this reflects back to how much communication do you have with the team? Are you open to listening to their advice? Are you open to listening to how you can improve efficiently? They will know local software systems that are compatible in China that you could actually use them in the Chinese market. Open your ears, all right, and listen to them. Suggestion 5, accept that a good idea is a good idea, regardless of who said it and where it started. Remember, you have to let go of your ego, of your stubbornness and arrogance when you're going into the Chinese market. You are not king, all right? I have seen on phone calls, lots of local employees come up with fantastic ideas that have been immediately rejected without even going into background and research. It just demotivates the employees. If you're not even willing to listen or even go a further step and research and understand what they're trying to say. If you're already pinning them down through a phone call, it's terrible. It brings an atmosphere that you don't listen, you don't care. You're going to have high turnover of staff for sure. Now, not all great ideas are generated from HQ. Like I said, your team in China, your ecosystem in China, they are the experts for the market. Now, having said that, your China team should also be open to suggestions made from HQ, based again about the company background, what their experiences have been in other jurisdictions. Nobody should be dissing one or the other. Actually, there should be absolutely open communication. A lot of communication, which unfortunately during the pandemic went downhill for most of my clients because people were not taking on the time to take 1 hour out of their day to get on a Zoom call or a Teams meeting call with their team in China to say, what's up? Anything that you want to report. Sometimes these meetings can last 5 minutes, guys. It's just showing the team that you care and you want to improve efficiency and scale up. It's also an idea to showcase, see what they're doing on a day-to-day basis. I'm in communication daily with my team, with my execution team, with my delivery service team. Why? Because I want to let them feel included, let them feel part of the team. Okay. So please make sure that you've got this open communication. Now, on the other side of the coin, if you have team members, partners, distributors, third-party providers who are also not listening to your ideas, and they're pinning them down straight away without evaluating them or giving you a proper reason as to why they are putting you down, then you need to evaluate whether they're the right fit for you. Okay? This is a two-sided street here. It is a bridge. Both sides have value, and they need to bring that value on the bridge, and both sides have to listen, and both sides have to agree that one could be right and one could be wrong. Okay? Egos have to be put on the side. All right? And sometimes it's good to tell people, stop now, you're a little bit on your high horse. Bring yourself back down to earth, put your feet on the ground, and let's evaluate. Suggestion number 6 is that knowledge is key. People in your organization, and not just a few at the top or in the international function, need to be more aware of the impact that international culture has on every facet of the business. They need to be given the specific knowledge necessary to work their way around a complex global environment. And then they need to apply that knowledge and awareness for the benefit of the business. How to do that? You have to provide planning. You have to provide training. And there has to be somebody there who deals with interventions. Otherwise, your business will get halted and get stopped. You need a bad guy. Somebody who comes in the middle to stop the complaining, to stop the back and forth discussions. Okay? There are a lot of people, when they don't know something, their knowledge level is not there, where their defense wall will come up and say, it's not my fault, it's not my fault. Actually, I couldn't care less if it's somebody's fault. I just want a solution to the problem. Don't you? I want to create a solution to every single problem or obstacle that I hit, and I want that solution within 24 hours. I don't want to play the blaming game. I'm not in kindergarten. Okay? We're running businesses here. We're trying to grow and expand our businesses. Mistakes happen. We're all human. Some mistakes are definitely bigger than others, but then you need to make the decision. Do we let that person go? Do we fire that partner? Do we let go of that distributor? Okay, those decisions have to be made quick if it's a huge cost to your company. But on a day-to-day basis, there has to be training provided to the individuals in HQ about what it's like in China. You can't travel to China anymore to feel the environment and get an understanding of the culture. So you need to provide that training in your HQ. All right. People need to understand when the Chinese New Year holidays are and not then expect results during the holiday. Be respectful of the culture in China when their public holidays are. Be respectful of time zones. Everybody wants to spend time with their family in the evenings. Be respectful of that. You will definitely have people who work overtime. Don't get me wrong. But I'm sure the respect also goes to the individuals working in your HQ. Please spread that on to the people that are working on the ground in China. Okay, again, it's a two-way street. And just like, and this doesn't happen often, your Chinese team should also be aware, when are the holidays in your home jurisdiction? When are the right times to call? Should we book the calls on a recurring manner? So you have that fluency in the communication. Okay, but if you don't plan, you don't train, and you don't have somebody who's a bad guy who comes in between to stop, to be to have interventions, basically. Many times I'm that individual for my clients when there are internal discussions that are not moving forward. And yeah, sometimes I have to choose sides, who's right and who's wrong, but I'm an observer, I'm an outsider. You can also hire somebody who's an observer and an outsider who comes in and acts as the targeted interventioner. but it would be good if somebody was that internally as well. Does not necessarily mean it's going to be the GM, might have to be somebody who is external from the business, who comes in once a month to just review. Okay, but somebody has to be the bad guy. Say stop acting like children and let's get on with it. Okay, I have seen companies get halted because solutions to obstacles are not created quick enough, and then they lose out on business. You can't afford that, particularly in your startup phase in China. Okay, so reaction has to be immediate. Decision-making has to be immediate. Now, let's go through the top 20 tips to understand Chinese business culture. And I will go through this quickly because it's really just statements that I want people to realize. And some I will go through in maybe a little bit more detail so that you understand. Okay, tip number 1, guanxi. Guanxi is personal relationships with anybody, with your team, with your partners. You are developing a personal relationship, not a business relationship. You ask personal questions. How's your family? Where are you originally from? What are your hobbies? What do you like? Okay. Having this type of conversation will open the doors to a more open communication level. It is of vital importance when doing business in China. Do not underestimate the importance of personal relationship building. Okay. You should know every single team member in China, particularly if you're in your startup phase where not so many, right? Maybe 5, maybe 10. You should know everybody individually, understand their background. Who are they as people? What have their experiences been? Don't just read the resumes, actually have the conversation with them. Why? Because if you develop that relationship and you guys actually really like each other, they might be a whistleblower about a team member who's done something wrong, or somebody who should be fired, who's actually the weak link in the chain, or they might be a whistleblower about a partner, or a logistics provider or distributor, whomever. You want your team to be able to communicate with you. And sometimes the GMs can be a block. Why? Because a lot of local Chinese GMs instill fear in their employees versus collaboration. So you as the foreigner, even if you're sitting in your HQ, develop this personal relationship with everybody. Okay, have one-to-one conversations. Number 2, people are comfortable building relationships with honorable people who show respect to those to whom respect is due. Take the rule of thumb that everyone deserves respect. Now, what do I mean by that? I still today have cases where foreigners, whether they're living in China or not, feel more superior than Chinese individuals in China. And it comes out in the way that they talk to them. It comes out in a way of looking down at them. It comes out in a way. You will never garner respect. You will only garner animosity and really the unwillingness to communicate and work with you. Like I said, the people that are in China know more than you. They are owed respect. And we know how successful China has been. So you starting to talk in a demeaning manner will not get you anywhere. Get off your high horse, put your feet back down on the ground, and realize who is on the ground building up your business. Now, this goes with anybody you hire, whether it's millennials, i.e. new graduates, all the way through senior management, etc. Okay. Again, the goal is to garner open communication. So personal relationship and respect when you're communicating. Now, in China, and just in terms of culture, all relationships are unequal when you look at mainland Chinese individuals. There is a type of hierarchy structure, if you will, based on age, based on seniority, based on educational background. So when you go into a meeting, understand who's the leader, the boss, the decision maker. More respect should actually be going towards them than the staff underneath. Research the team of the people you're collaborating with, understand their roles, their responsibilities, ask questions, who is in charge of who is the ultimate decision maker, so that you also know that if a problem arises, you know exactly who to go to in the ladder chain. But remember, respect goes with seniority, age, educational background. Okay. Now, I wrote here managers, but in reality, Chinese people tend to be extremely direct. There's no beating around the bush, saying things gently, anything like that. And that follows certain Confucian concepts and the hierarchical nature of the society. But people in China tend to be extremely direct. They don't know how to flower a situation or make things seem nicer. They will tell you straight on, and they will be brash, okay? Now, in my opinion, this is what you want. You want people to be honest with you. You want people to be direct with you. You don't want the under table conversation. This happened, I've noticed, having lived now in Europe for a couple of years, due to COVID, so all of this, there's all this flowery conversation, which really annoys me. I want people to just be honest and tell me, can I do something, yes or no? You'll get that from the Chinese. So sometimes it might be a bit of a shock to the system when they are so direct. I personally think you need to encourage that. You're going to get stuff done when they are direct, when they tell you yes or no, when they give you their opinion. Okay, so try and aim for that. Now, in return for being direct, you will get loyalty. The boss is expected to show consideration and interest in all aspects. And I hate using this word, the subordinate's life, but it's the people under him, right? In the hierarchy. You've got to develop a relationship with your local team. Now, one of the things I'm very proud of having created in China is that out of almost all of my competitors, I had and still have one of the lowest turnover rates in terms of team members. Why? Because I know I'm not an expert, they are. Two, I show respect. I talk to each individual. Now I'm doing it sort of in groups as the team gets built bigger, but I am instilling a place where they can come to me. Does it occupy my time? Absolutely. But I prefer that time spent versus having to always continuously find new candidates and going through recruitment processes and evaluating people. That is even more time consuming and laborious than actually just spending a little bit of quality time with your team. This also relates to your suppliers, to your customers, to third-party providers that you are collaborating with. Okay, show consideration. Now, I also want to highlight here that as you get bigger and as the business gets bigger, naturally you will have to delegate work. Okay, you can't do everything. You can't be everywhere. Can't answer every single email. You will have to delegate work. All right. But that doesn't mean that you should give up on those relationships. Your customer will want to see you. And if they don't, you might find that they naturally place fewer orders. They want to see the boss. Now, obviously, with COVID, travel restrictions, et cetera, why can't you set up a Zoom call? Okay. Again, 30 minutes on the phone, boss to boss. They want to see you. They want to communicate with you. And yes, it might be a chit chat, but that might help you to retain the customer and build up on the orders. So don't forget to use your status as a boss to maintain relationships as well, and to maintain loyalty by the people that are important to the business. Now, there are often close relationships between senior management of a company and local party officials. Now, some of you might read that and your immediate thought might be, oh, kickbacks and paying under table money to local officials. No, this doesn't occur. Depending on your industry, depending on your sector, you may very well need to have close relationships with certain local party officials. This does not mean that you're giving money on it. No, it just means you're formulating a relationship in case you need them, or in case they need you. Again, you're creating win-win relationships. In the case of me, I have a network of relationships with tax officers in Shanghai, as well as in other cities. I pop into those conversations every now and then, especially when I was based in Shanghai. Currently, I do that less so, but my senior management do maintain those relationships. Not only does it help from our side to get the latest updates on regulations and what is happening in the various industries and sectors, but also from a tax perspective in general. But also in the situation where we need favors, it helps a lot. Now, these local party officials get much less from our relationship. I get more, but you never know if they need a favor. Can we help them? We have to always analyze that. We're in 2022. The idea of kickbacks, under table money, gifts is becoming less and less just because of global regulations around bribery and whatnot. And the Chinese know this. But maintaining relationships with certain key officials will always help. Now, point number 7, it is important that you do not make people lose face in front of their group. Always respect seniority and do not openly disagree with people, or if you do it publicly, do it in a logical and respectful way, i.e., do not lose your patience. Make sure you're very calm. This is a huge thing in Chinese culture. Embarrassing somebody in front of a group, or even just simply embarrassing somebody because you've terminated them. All right. Make sure you are doing things fairly and in a respectful way. And if there's any piece of advice I can give, is before you think you're going to lose your patience, talk to a lawyer to make sure you don't get stuck. Okay. What you don't want, and I'll give you the example of employment. If you hire somebody and actually in the end of the day, you decide to terminate them. Yeah, that first conversation might be very calm, might be very nice and soft, and you're terminating them. You're giving him a couple of reasons, or her a couple of reasons why, and he agrees, she agrees, and everything is a-okay in that Zoom call. Number 1, record it. Make sure you've got recordings of everything. But also, number 2, you may expect that 3 days later, after the person has digested everything and they are embarrassed and they've lost face because they were fired, they will retaliate. And in every company in China, there is always a piece of leverage that employees or third parties may have over you. Because again, the law is not black and white, it's gray. So there's always room for interpretation. So they might know something that you have done, which you didn't think was bad or illegal or anything like that, but they might interpret it, go to the labor arbitration committee and denounce you. And once that's done, you have to go through a court case or an arbitration case, okay? Which can be heavy, costs money. So make sure you get the advice before you attend a meeting where you know that you're going to have to complain about something. Either talk to your team or talk to an advisor around it so that you're covering all aspects. Do as many favors for people as possible. Now, this doesn't really work foreigner to foreigner, but it works a lot within the Chinese culture. Everybody does favors one for another. And many times there's no monetary compensation for these favors. It's just favors that are being done by various people. And there is always the expectation that you will pay that favor back. Do as many favors for people as possible. Be kind in that way. Now, this is important because if you are a company that has very strict compliance procedures, internal compliance, guidelines, and regulations, you might restrict your team from being able to do this. Again, when you come to China, you might need to be more lenient on these compliance regulations to allow for this to occur, because this is part of the business culture. Now, previously, pre-COVID, business cards were essential. I'm still leaving that in there because it is still essential, particularly with the older generation that you're working with, and particularly if you're meeting with them to exchange business cards. When you go to China, make sure you bring a stack with you. Again, especially if you're doing face-to-face meetings. Millennials don't want business cards. It's not part of their thing. They're going to grab their phone and be like, let me scan you on WeChat. Let's connect. So make sure that you have your own personal WeChat account. Like I said, you can't have a business, a company account where everybody is on there. It's personal WeChat accounts. That is vital for doing business. Okay. That is how people contact each other, how people call each other, how people communicate each other. It's less by email and more by WeChat. If you don't want to lose out on contacts and a network, make sure you set up your personal WeChat account. What I have realized, not what I've realized, what as a tip for those of you that don't have WeChat is you need a person who does have WeChat to verify it. And what works perfectly is scanning over Zoom. So get on a Zoom call with somebody. We just did that the other day. And I was able to allow the person set up a WeChat account by scanning through Zoom video, which was fantastic. You do need that. It is important to have that. All right, number 10. Okay, we're almost there, guys. Please be patient. Number 10, meetings are often long and seemingly without clear objectives. I've got a very wonderful case study on this. I traveled with my father on business to China when I was 18 years old. We went up to Changzhou and we were visiting a factory with a client, and we sat in there, no joke, for 6 hours. And to my astonishment, nothing was finalized. Nothing was agreed on. Nothing was, it was 6 hours of back and forth discussion. If something was not resolved, it moved on to the next point. What I want people to be aware of is that you can go into meetings that are very long with no clear objective, but also no clear action plan thereafter. This is changing now with the millennials. So I want you to be aware of that. But if you are talking to the higher up decision makers, expect that. Okay. Number 11. It can take several very long meetings before any tangible process is made. So patience is essential if you wish to capitalize on the situation. Develop patience. I developed it very quickly when I moved to China. Number 12. The Chinese are very interested in long-term commitments. Build long-term goals and objectives into your proposals, but please also don't forget to have exit strategies. i.e., if the goals are not achieved in the various stages, you have the right to terminate the relationship. Okay. Yes, it is positive to have long-term goals and objectives and to build that into your contracts. It's wonderful to have one partner who does all of that. But if the partner does not actually do his job and is not hitting those KPIs, you should be able to switch and change. Do not sign exclusivity anywhere. Number 13, the Chinese may be very direct with you, but you need to be a little bit less direct with them. Again, it's a matter of respect and not losing face. Strive for diplomacy, harmony. Remember that it takes time to achieve things, not just in one meeting, in several meetings. Do not assume comprehension. This is something that I have learned, and now I'm very successful in going around this. My mindset is I do not assume anything. I do not interpret anything. If I do not get a clear answer on something, I push and ask continuous questions until I have complete clarity. And even when I have clarity, I then email that clarity or converse on that clarity, and I expect then confirmation once again. You've got to be able to make sure you know what you're doing, you know what the steps are, and you have complete transparency and clarity over action plans. The Chinese, you've got to realize English is not their first language, might not even be yours. So there's always going to be a language barrier. Okay. And I still have this with one of my my staff members that I've worked with for over 7-8 years. there are still moments where I continually ask questions because they don't always give me the full picture. It's kind of one line, one sentence answers without giving me the full story or background or information, because that's what people need. They need understanding in order to take next steps or to pivot the business. So one key thing I will say is, do not assume. The minute you assume, mistakes will happen. Get complete clarity and transparency, and this leads back to meetings being very long. Be patient, but get the full picture and clarity. Remember, you don't know what you don't know. So if something is not clear, do not assume, get clarity. Number 15, it is difficult for the Chinese to say no directly. Again, it's a matter of face. Anything other than a direct yes could mean no. So make sure you are, again, doing the back and forth. Don't make assumptions. For me, my biggest understanding that it's a yes is when the agreement is signed and the first payment has been done. Then I know we're actually transacting and we're in business together. Until then, I have no idea. So don't make assumptions. You know, people can sign beautiful master distribution agreements. Does not mean that you're actually in business with them until the first transaction takes place. Okay, so be aware of that. Number 16, it is difficult to read body language, especially in China. In China, body language is very muted, expressions are very muted. And obviously now that a lot of meetings are not done in person, but are actually done virtually through Zoom and team meetings or WeChat even, you will find that it's very hard to read people, which is why I do it by language, i.e. getting clarity, transparency, and never making assumptions. Westerners in general have learned how to do public speaking. They move, there's posture, there's animation, there's change in voice levels. The Chinese have less of that. Number 17, gift giving is an everyday part of Chinese business culture. And what you need to understand is that there is a balance between gift giving and bribery. Okay, so you need to look at your corporate governance in regards to gift giving. Every Chinese New Year, it's not a bribe, it's again a gift. We give all of our third-party providers, suppliers, and whatnot, tax officers, vouchers to buy cakes. In September, we provide vouchers to get moon cakes. So a lot of the time they love desserts. 20 odd years ago, we used to buy, get gift vouchers to buy cigarettes. This is not something where you spend 1,000 renminbi on a gift. This is where you buy a gift voucher for people that are helping you and you want to say thank you for being a part of the business. It is as if you are giving your team members a thank you every year, not just through a bonus, but through a small gift to say thank you for being a part of the team and growing the business. Always wrap the gifts. So if they're vouchers, we put them in envelopes, but we also buy gift cards and make a little note. We make it very personal, and they love this stuff. Does it take time? Absolutely it does. Some of you might think this is a waste of time. I tell you, it's all about the favors, and they love it. They remember you. And again, you never know if they're going to owe you a favor or if you want to ask them a favor. Number 19, do not make disparaging remarks about China, about the political situation, about human rights. Now, this is absolutely the best example I can give. In the last 3 years, I've communicated on a daily basis with my right-hand person in Shanghai. Her name is Sally. And her optimism and positivity has been astounding. And when I show her my despair about the zero COVID policy, about the lockdowns, about the quarantine regulations, she always answers in a positive way. Now, this is just the relationship we formatted. She will never vocalize how upset she is. She'll never vocalize anything bad about her home, her country. She won't do it in public on a Zoom call or anything like that. Do not expect people to do that. Now, I have these conversations with Sally because she's a team member. She's been with me for over 10 years. I don't have conversations about any of this with local mainland Chinese staff. Okay. Don't do it. Stay away from the politics. Politics, religion, these are things you don't discuss around a dinner table. Try and avoid it. Try to not talk badly about China. You are in China for an opportunity that is very exciting. Let's not talk about the negativity side of things. Point number 20, entertaining is very important in the relationship building process. Now, obviously, there's no entertaining right now, or it's very limited if there is, okay? What I want people to realize is that I'm pretty sure it will come back once the COVID policies get lighter and easier, is don't forget to start entertaining and having your team entertain key players within your ecosystem, whether, again, that's customers, third parties, etc. What you can do right now instead of the entertaining is place more focus on the gift giving, because this can always be done through Taobao and other avenues. Entertaining, again, it's limited. Much less of that is happening, but it will revamp again. And especially if you're on the ground, it is a key component to building up the personal relationships, the guanxi, with the key players that are in your ecosystem. Now, to finish off today, I just want to give some maybe action plans, if you will, keywords for leading a team in China. At the end of the day, Chinese business people, especially the younger generation, the millennials, are understanding and respectful of cultural differences. They don't expect foreigners to be fully accustomed to their traditions. However, having a basic grasp of Chinese business etiquette and culture can not only impress your colleagues, counterparts, the key players within your ecosystem, but it can also build stronger and long-term relationships. So point number 1 is educate yourself on doing business in China, on opening that bridge with an open communication with all parties. I highly recommend to attend trainings on Chinese culture and business etiquette, not just for you, but also for key people within the HQ, and vice versa. You know, a lot of the chambers of commerce provide the overseas culture and business etiquette. So for example, the German Chamber of Commerce offers trainings on German culture and German business etiquette. This might be something very good for your Chinese team to attend, okay? Learn very basic Chinese. I mean, the minimum is ni hao ma, which is hello, how are you? Little tidbits here and there. I'm not asking you to take a Mandarin training course right now, but a little bit where ultimately your team laughs at you because your tonation is terrible. They love it, but they love that you've made the effort. Learn the geography of China. When I went to university in the US, I could not stand it when I told Americans that I was from Hong Kong, and the first question they would ask was, do you speak Japanese? If you go to China and you don't know where Chengdu, Chongqing, Shanghai, Beijing, Guangzhou, Nanjing, Wuxi, these tier 1, tier 2 cities are in the geography of China, you're really not going to get very far. All right. So again, learn the geography a little bit. It's huge. All right. And understand where your clients are based. Great exercise to do is get a map of China and have your team pinpoint where your customers are based, where suppliers are based, where our third-party ecosystem is based. If they're all in Shanghai, that makes your life easier. But if you're also distributing to retail outlets, understand where in China are you actually selling, right? Get a basis of the geography. The other thing is try everything. The Chinese love to try everything, whether it's food-based, whether it's not food-based, whether it's also just business-based, software-based. They love to try anything that's digital. Be open to that. Try everything. And again, personal relationship is vital. You want to build strong and long-term relationships with key players within your organization, within your ecosystem. So you've got to develop that personal relationship. All right, that's all from my side. I hope that this has helped many of you. As usual, I always love to hear what biggest takeaways were from today. Also, just a disclaimer, I went through my top 20 tips. There's so much more to learn, again, which is why I'm saying you can always take trainings, cultural or etiquette trainings, where you'll learn so much more than just this brief presentation, right? So it's just my top 20 tips, the basics that you need to know about. And again, my conclusion or my summary for all of this is you are building a bridge between HQ and China. How are you going to make sure that the foundation of that bridge remains stronger over time, and develops over time into very fruitful relationships where, again, you're growing and scaling at a fast speed. So again, I would love to know what your biggest takeaway from today was. If you want to ask a question, please use the chat box, type it in. I will stay on to answer all the questions. If, for those of you that don't know what we do, we are a corporate services firm based in Hong Kong and in China. And we provide everything from brand advisory, trademark, registration and searches, to validating China strategies, to then implementation of company setup, etc. We then also do all the administrative compliance, accounting, tax, payroll functions. We can appoint people in various roles. And then we also do recruitment for in-house finance teams, if that's something you're looking for. If you're interested in learning more about how to employ talent in China, how to do business in China, or generally you want to learn more about your own China strategy and whether it makes sense, then you can email me at Kristina@woodburnglobal.com. And I will come back to you with a couple of time slots. Last but not least, again, so I've done now probably about 4 or 5 sessions on HR issues. We're going to finish off this year, continuing with HR issues. Next week, we're talking about low-cost training. Like I said, something like cultural and etiquette training. How to find the right people for your organization if that's something you want to bring in-house. And then on December 14th, we're talking about risks and precautions, how to avoid fraud, how to create system processes within your organization to evade fraud, to evade risk, etc. So again, for those of you that are live, you are already subscribed to the community. You can come on next Wednesday, November 23rd. The link is exactly the same and you can join in, all right? There have been no questions that have popped in. If there are any questions, you can just let me know. I will hang around a bit more. In the meantime, I'll stop the recording. And I want to thank everybody for joining me today. Have a great day. Goodbye.